Hello, so I'm doing my contemporary project, issues project on higher education costs and the increase of higher education costs. So I'm going to kind of go over a timeline of how this higher cost of education happened and why it happened and when it started happening, and then I'll go into a solution that I have for higher education costs. So there hasn't always been a student loan or higher education crisis in America. In the 1980s, it was about $870 to attend a college, kind of depending on which one you went to. Even if it was a very prestigious college or a private college, it was affordable. A lot of different family members from different social classes were allowed to attend or were able to attend. But however, at this time, not all families really saw the value in higher education. They didn't know if there was a value for higher education, so not everybody attended. It wasn't about, and so in the 80s, families did start realizing that there was a need or a benefit for a college degree, and they saw a benefit for a college degree because they saw an increase in earnings if you had a degree. So there became, after the 80s and through the 90s, there became a large increase in attendance at universities. So from in the 1990s or late 80s, attendance was from 8.5 million to 13 million. And with this increase came higher education costs, and not higher education costs, but the university started generating more revenue. And with this revenue, they started using more, they started paying their teachers better. They grew their campuses to be able to accommodate this large amount of people. And this larger, like paying their teachers and creating a larger campus, didn't really see an extreme tuition raise or cost for college. It gradually rose, but it wasn't like detrimental or very, it kind of went unnoticed, or it wasn't, very impactful. So then comes the 2000s, and with the 2000s came tax cuts and budget cuts. And because of these tax cuts and budget cuts, it was to start lowering the taxes for just regular people. So then to make up for the tax cuts that the university wasn't receiving, they hired tuition costs. And then with this tuition cost, they built athletic facilities. They paid their teachers even more. They wanted to make their university the most prestigious it could be. And they even, with these things like athletics facilities and hired and better teachers and better labs, which is a big cost, they were trying to earn grants, government grants, to host research or have just more people interested in attending their university, so they were gaining more money to make up for the cuts that they saw. They also made more comfortable more dorms to accommodate more people, and then they started giving scholarships to disadvantaged students, or kind of people who didn't go to college or never really had the opportunity to go to college. So all these things really added up, and with the add up came more higher tuition costs. So the big thing that happened was legislative costs, or state legislative cuts. And I have an example here. So in 1990, Ohio, the state, had already had cuts back in its funding for public higher education. So that year, the state's flagship university, Ohio State, received only 25% of the budget from the legislature. 10 years later, in 2000, state allocations for the school had been reduced to 15%. And then in 2012, Ohio State received only 7% of the funds from the state of Ohio. So within, 20 years, they've lost almost 20% of their funding, let alone it only started at 25% of their funding. And Ohio State wasn't the only one who was dealing with these dealing with these cuts. It was it was happening all over the country. So in Washington, first, the Seattle Times reported that the tuition at the University of Washington had increased by 150%. And then over 10 years, between 2003 and 2013, that was when the increase happened. So Washington State had funded the university 64% of the university's budget, which is really, really large compared to Ohio State's 25% budget. But then in 2013, or from 2003 to 2013, it had been reduced to 31%, which is, still pretty decent compared to Ohio starting out with 25%, but it's an alarming cutback for me. And then I kind of have another little fact here is that in 2007 and 2012, tuitions at public four-year colleges had gone up by 15% in 40 states, more than 25% in 18 states, and more than 50% in 7 states. And then California and Arizona increased their public university tuition by more than 70% between 2007 and 2012. So as you can see, there's just these large increases that are happening in the early 2000s to now that have created such high tuition rates. And personally, for me, I'm learning myself that I'm not wanting to go to more school because I know I'm going to have to pay more money. Like, it's more or less I'm worried about taking on the debt than worried about or trying to accomplish higher education for myself. It's not about my end goal. It's about worried about the debt that I'm going to have and if I'm going to be able to pay it off. Fortunately for me, at the age of 18, I got a full ride scholarship. And I was able to go to school for free for 4 years. And that's great. That's awesome. However, I'm learning that at age 18, I don't know if I should have been in college yet, and not wasting that money or paying money, or even people who have to pay money if they have some sort of path that they're trying to get to. So I wanted to be a sports psychologist, I wanted to be a physical therapist, but I wasn't able to do that on my full ride scholarship because I had practice, or I was on a volleyball scholarship, so I had practice and I wasn't able to do that. And so now I'm trying to figure out, well, what else do I want to do, and what else am I going to try and spend my rest of my career or rest of my life doing? How am I supposed to pick that at the age of 18? So I'm kind of getting more comfortable with the idea of having a gap year for students, or having some sort of way. And I think that junior colleges are a way that kids can figure out what they want to do during that time. And so they're not spending money on higher education to just kind of not know what to do by the time they're out of college, or even if it was the right path. So with that statement comes my encouragement for dual education, and how dual education can lower the cost of higher education and student loan debt. So I just think back to my dad. He didn't have higher education. He maybe went a year to junior college. I don't know at what age, but right now he's a successful businessman. He runs his own business. He's decently wealthy, he provides for his family. He's able to live the life that he wants to live, and it's all based on high school and his work training that he did, and how he worked up the ranks and what he learned from other people. And I think now we're putting so much emphasis on having a degree, that what has that degree really taught you and the work experience it has really given you. And I hate the fact that these people who have been at companies forever and learning from the CEO or whoever who has whatever kind of mentor, they've learned inside knowledge about the company, and they can't get promoted because they just don't have a degree or some sort of certificate saying that they're allowed to work that position, when probably whoever they hire, because they have the degree, is going to come in, and the person who was there already is going to have to teach the person with the degree how to do the job correctly, when that person who's been there forever could have just done the job for them. So I'm kind of in favor of dual education and how it could help. So I have an example here. In Germany, they're having young kids, dual education is becoming very popular in Germany. The only downfall is that they're having younger kids specializing early. And I don't think that's necessarily great, because you don't necessarily know if what you want to do when you're 16 and you're specializing in something you're trying to do for the rest of your life. I don't know if that's the best idea, but it's a good idea, I think, to start initiating dual education. And this is one thing that the company, or that Germany said, is by being embedded in companies, apprentices get a taste of what a particular job is like and find out whether it suits them or not. So I think this is a great idea, because you're getting kind of thrown into a situation. I could have been thrown into physical therapy and figured out if I liked it, if I didn't like it, what I was going to learn, if I wanted to spend my rest of my life like this or not, But I never know. And now I won't ever know, because I've started this whole new path towards whatever career I'm leading towards now. They also form relationships at firms, and managers get to observe them. This makes them easier to hire more permanently once their training is complete, because CEOs or whoever is seeing this person, they've known that they have taught them the ways correctly. They know that they can depend on this person. They know they can get the job done. So apprentices who become employees, unlike most other new hires, already have the practical skills most employers think are useful. So they already know the skills. And with this, they don't have to go and spend money on trainings for new employees or new apprentices, because they already know the information. And since they've been working at the firm and they learned all this information, they don't need to spend money at higher education universities learning, something that might not be applicable to the workforce or this firm that they have now a permanent job at. So in the US, this I feel like is very far away from dual education, because of the lack of consistency that dual education has. So what this person's doing at work, how does that constitute to having a bachelor's degree of education, But since they're not in the classroom, you kind of have to find, there's a gray area between what is education and what constitutes them having a bachelor's degree or anything like that. So I think that there's some definite growth in dual education, and I think seniors in high school are kind of learning, or it's kind of the blueprint, or setting a little foundation between they can, in high school they're getting credit or college credits, and that can go towards their degree. And so I think we're taking a step in the right direction. I think that everyone realizing how high tuition rates are, that this will be a good step, and that everybody will kind of be interested in taking a step towards dual education. So hope that was helpful, and and that's what I think is our contemporary issue, and that's how I think we could solve it. And I would have loved to have been a participant of dual education myself. Thank you.